So there are a couple of buzzwords, losing my ability to talk. There are a couple of buzzwords that I want to introduce you to. And one of the buzzwords is responsive design. So responsive design is building your web pages to respond to different viewport sizes. So that's what we've been talking about with media queries, like just changing what happens, putting in a breakpoint, and changing what happens at different sizes. And that's known as responsive design, having websites that are responsive to the size of the viewport. Responsive design, got it? So that's a buzzword you'll see out there. Another one is mobile first. And so this is a recommendation. It's just like, how are you going to build that responsive website? Are you going to start out big and then try to change things and get it to look good small? Or are you going to start out small and then change things and get it to look good big? And the vast majority of developers, they believe, including myself, it's easier to start mobile first and then change that and get it looking good on mobile. And plus that's important because the majority of your users will be on mobile. As mind-blowing as that is to me, having grown up with desktops and right, but the majority of web users are on mobile. So start mobile first, get it looking good there, then increase it, and when it stops looking good, add a breakpoint, right? Then put a media query in to make that breakpoint happen, and overwrite your CSS that you wrote for mobile first to get it to look good at tablet size. And then make it a little bit bigger, and when it no longer looks good at that size, another breakpoint with a media query, and then get it looking good at that size. And anyhow, your CSS, and then you stack your CSS. And so it pulls it in if it's at the larger size, and it overwrites the stuff that was there at mobile first. And that's also advantageous building it that way because mobile first downloads the least amount of code. And as you get on larger screen sizes, you might have to download a little bit of extra. I mean, we're talking about just lines of text, but it all adds up. And generally speaking, screen size corresponds with bandwidth. So if I'm going to put a little bit of a burden, and we're talking about a really small burden here, but if I'm going to put a little bit of a burden on extra data that needs to be transferred to a user, I want to do that with the user who has more bandwidth. And that's going to be the person with the larger screen size, generally speaking. So one rule you could use when also thinking about your layout, and this is just a readability study, I thought I'd just stick it in here, is that you want 70 to 80 characters of text per line. So studies show that that's the ideal amount of characters on a line of text to make it readable for people. That's because a lot of people are dumb. A lot of people aren't educated, and that's sad. It's sad, but I said it in a way that I was making it funny, but it's sad. It's not a cool thing. But a lot, and that's just the way we are as humans. For whatever reason, you get more than 10 words on a line of text and it becomes harder to read. And, there's all kinds of look at books or whatever, and you could see all kinds of exceptions and people not adhering to that. But that's what the studies show is it's most readable 10 words per line. And, obviously, I'm just going to go on a tangent here, but obviously, the shorter the sentences, the better, right? So shorter sentences and the fewer syllables in each word, in your words, the better. And so you could even run in Microsoft Word, or there's probably a website online, you could run your stuff through I think it's a Fleshman Kincaid reading level tool online. I don't know, something like that. Measure text readability. Sweet. Improve your writing. Measure, improve the readability, marketing, ... text, URLs, files, alerts. So I'm totally on a tangent. I thought there might be somewhere in here where I could drop, my code in and say, you're writing at the 3rd grade level, which I'd be like, sweet. That's the average grade level of education of Americans. I think I got to find that out now too. Average grade level of American adults. 7th or 8th grade. All right, so I was a little bit off. But crazy. It's not super high. Anyhow, that's readability. Last thing I'll say just about writing. Hemingway website. Write like Hemingway. Write like Hemingway website. And a Hemingway editor. So you could get this app. And it's going to show you how to write like Hemingway. It's pretty amazing. But Hemingway, right, wrote short sentences. except for occasionally, he'd add in that sentence that was like, supposed to give you a little bit of emotional overwhelm or, for an emotional effect. But he wrote short, succinct, newspaper style writing. And that was kind of cool. Anyhow, 70 to 80 characters per line. There's a few other expressions we haven't talked about. These are them. Never use these ones on the bottom because, at least last time I researched this, they have issues. And these hardly ever get used, but they're fine to use. But I don't know. There's not much of a use case for them. These are the ones we lean on 99.9% of the time. All right, so that's responsive design. That's mobile first. And that's a little bit about readability. And a few other like expressions for media queries, which we haven't talked about because you don't ever use them. But that's just housekeeping, and I wanted you to know about them. Okay, so in the next video, we're going to have some hands-on exercises and then some solutions and then a review. And then onwards and forwards to the next stuff.